Hello folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero October 2021 kit. This is the 6-year anniversary of My Monthly Hero, and to celebrate that anniversary, Hero Arts is putting their My Monthly Hero kits in these great 8x10 zippered pouches. Look at that, a real zipper on the top. Everything comes packed inside. This is a Victorian Christmas kit. Here's our stamp set. Let me take that out. And here we go. Look at that backer card, though. Gorgeous Christmas store, Christmas shop. We've got this lovely 6x8-inch stamp set featuring a great big Victorian Christmas tree, all decorated with candles and decorations. These look like a big stack of profiteroles or something. Abundance of fruit. We've got a candelabra, a table, more fruit, a star, a bit of a garland here, gifts, a hobby horse, stacks of champagne, some flourishes, a little vintage tricycle down there. Lots of sentiments, nice ones. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. I love this Victorian type here from all of us. We've got a cheers and sending an abundance of joy. We've got to you and happy holidays. Really nice stamp set. We're going to be doing some coloring this month. Of course, we do get matching frame cuts for all of those images, and a fancy shop window die. So this die has got actually a frame around it, and then the decoration die. Nice shop window. We also get 6 sheets of acetate. They say this is biodegradable acetate. Very interesting. We can make our own shop windows with our acetate sheets. We've got 6 of those, I think. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's right. A bunch of jewel tone cardstock. This is all 8.5 by 5.5. Some great colors here. Very jewel tony. 7 sheets of jewel tone cardstock. A 1/2 ounce pot of Prisma glitter. You want to put a little snow in your windows? This is the perfect way to do it. Prisma glitter. I've been doing a little work on this year's Christmas card from me and Joel, so a little Christmas kit is perfectly in theme with what I've been working on lately. So let's see if we can take this Victorian Christmas kit beyond the shop window. And here we have my 10 cards for the month. I'm sorry it's taken me a little time to get this post together. My old Cuttlebug die cutting machine decided to give up the ghost right in the middle of working on this kit. I was actually a little surprised at how that broken tool seemed to really stifle my motivation and creativity this month. I was kind of crushed when my poor old machine died. Now, our window shop cover plate die comes in 2 pieces. So this cuts all of the windows and the decorative elements, and this little frame die will cut that out. That's 4.25 by 5.5 inches. Now, I'm not sure why I chose to start this way, but I decided to use the light brown cardstock for my card base, and I cut the window die directly in the front of this colored card base. So here we have, here's our first Merry Christmas card through that cover plate shop window. I die cut just the center part of that die in the front of this brown almost kind of craft colored cardstock in our kit. I die cut that on the front panel, and then I glued a piece of acetate behind that. I stamped the sentiment with intense black ink and embossed that as well with some clear embossing powder. You can see that shine there. And I used alcohol marker and a white gel pen to add some shadows and some highlights to our little wood decorative pieces on this shop front. So now I have a window on the front of my card. Now what to put behind that? Now, I was particularly intrigued by how this Christmas tree, the angel on top, fits so nicely in the top little arch of those windows. So I stamped the Christmas tree with intense black ink on some Nina Solar white cardstock. I colored the tree up using my alcohol markers. Now, I often complain that my Spectrum Noir markers don't have as fine a point on them as Copic markers do, so I sometimes have a hard time coloring small images, like the ornaments on this tree. I took extra care with this image. I was able able to color everything with very little bleeding, very light touches of my alcohol markers to color this tree up. But it came out really nice. I die cut the tree with the matching die, and I cut one more layer of that from white cardstock to glue behind the tree for a little bit of dimension. Now I had to decide whether to put the tree on the inside of the card base, effectively limiting the space to write a message, or figure out a way to attach that tree to the front panel of the card. So I cut a piece of craft cardstock, slightly smaller than the card front, and I glued some simple snowflake pattern paper to the top of that. This is just some old Christmas paper I have lying around in my stash. Nice, simple snowflake pattern on the back of that. I glued that on top of my craft cardstock, and then I did a little bit of ink blending on the edges with some pumice stone ink, just to bring the edges of that background down a little bit. I glued my stack of trees to the pattern paper and then glued the whole piece to the back of the card front. Very nice. I think it gives you a really nice sense of depth and dimension behind that window and to the tree. You've got nice shadows there. It's kind of like a reverse engineered shaker card, but it's so much thinner than an actual shaker card would be. And of course, there's nothing shaking inside this. For a little final touch, I did add some of the Prisma glitter to the corners of the window, just some plain precision glue and some of that glitter in the corners of the windows. A perfectly framed Christmas tree on prominent display in our little lovely shop window. Merry Christmas! I did think it was interesting that our stamp set had a lot of images that were items that you would put on a table. The fruit, the croquembouche, the champagne glasses, the candelabra, all of those images that go on a table, but only one table. And there's not much room for more than one of those items on the table at any given time. So for card number 2, on a white card base, we have sending an abundance of joy, with 3 of those little tables with all of our treats on top of that. I stamped the tables, the champagne, the fruit bowl, and the croquembouche, which is a stack of profiteroles. That has to be what that is. I don't think it can be much of anything else. I stamped those all on some Neenah Solar white cardstock, and again colored those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. I die cut everything out and then glued the items to the tops of the tables. Now you can see here that I actually fussy cut the white border away from the bottom of these images when I glue them to the table. So it kind of looks like just one stamp there with the white outline going around everything, and there's no white outline sitting on the tabletops. I think that adds a lot when you're gluing die cuts together. I stamped the sentiment on a plain white card base using intense black ink, and I embossed that with some clear embossing powder for a little dimension and shine. I added this pre-cut silver glitter frame to the edges. Now I have these pre-cut, that's an old Alta New Fine Frames cover die that cuts a million different frames all at once. When I do that, I'll cut it and save the pieces and use them on different cards as the need comes up. So this was already pre-cut, just a little silver glitter frame. Glued that down to my white card base, and I glued the 2 back tables and their items flat to the card base, and then added our champagne table with some foam tape on the front. Just having these 3 tables feels quite abundant to me, not to mention all the treats on top. Looks like it's getting ready for party time. And I love these sentiments. I love these big sentiments, and the font on these sentiments I think is just kind of gorgeous. Sending an abundance of joy, and a big croquembouche. And there's a candelabra in our stamp set too that we of course have to put on a table. There's no grand piano in this stamp set. So for card 3, we have a Merry Christmas card. This is really nice. This kind of feels like Christmas at Liberace's or something with that candelabra. Now, I ink smooshed this background using Twisted Citron and Bundled Sage Distress Oxide inks. And when that was dry, I stamped the sentiment using intense black ink. I embossed that with some clear embossing powder, so you get some nice shine on that. I cut that panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, added a thin black mat, and glued those down to a white card base. I also used a little bitty white gel pen and added some texture in the background too. Very pleased with this ink smoosh background. I thought it came out very nicely. I don't smoosh enough. I should probably smoosh some more. Now, I stamped these images on Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored them with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. Now, those markers have an extremely fine point, and it's really easy to color these little itty-bitty tiny areas on these stamps. I glued the candelabra to the table, again cutting away the white border on the bottom of the candelabra before gluing it to the table, so we only have one continuous white outline around the whole thing. No white borders sitting on the top of that table. The tricycle and the table are glued flat to the card base. The gifts are added with some foam tape on those, a little bit of dimension there. Then I added some star-shaped sprinkles around this card, just for a little sparkle, a little more glitter and shine on that. Merry Christmas. I think it's really interesting how well the candelabra and the trike, the table, and that sentiment all go together. They certainly look like they belong together. Merry Christmas on a fun ink smooshed background. Love that sentiment. That font is so nice. So we've used that shop window die from the outside looking in. Let's see if we can use that die from the inside looking out. For my fourth card, we have a lovely little Christmas scene here with a lovely nighttime sky through those windows. This is the card that killed my Cuttlebug. I die cut the window for this scene from some 100-pound white Neenah cardstock, and I trimmed off the top signage and then replaced that at the bottom with just some plain white cardstock, ultimately giving us some room to add a floor on the bottom here. I've got to have some place to put my tree and my hobby horse. I attached those two pieces of cardstock together and then trimmed that whole thing down to just under 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Then I took a full 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of blue cardstock from my stash, and I did some ink blending on that using blue Hawaii ink and Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide ink and some black soot Distress Oxide ink to give us that nice dark ombre in the background. When that was dry, I spattered some stars using some permanent white gouache watercolor paint. I glued the sky and the window together, leaving a thin outline of blue around the die cut, and glued that down to a plain white card base. Now this tree and this hobby horse are both stamped on Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored with my Zig watercolor inks. I die cut both with their matching dies. I glued the horse to the tree and mounted those both to my floor here with some foam tape. Now, I couldn't bring myself to clutter up the front of this card with a sentiment, so I simply stamped the Merry Christmas sentiment on the inside using intense black ink. Love that sentiment. I did add one of the little curly-Q flourishes there at the beginning of the sentiment. This feels classically Victorian. I really love that dark, dark blue sky out there. Oh, so very Victorian. And it's reinforced by that lovely Victorian sentiment on the inside of the card. Merry Christmas. So my Cuttlebug's dead. I had to go look for a new die cutting machine. I ordered a new Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get here. In the meantime, it looks like it's one layer cards for now. For my next card here, we've got a Happy Holidays card with a big fancy spread in one layer with almost no masking at all. I stamped everything on a panel of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I sketched in the surroundings as I went. The little table. I decided where the table was before I stamped the garland. I colored everything up with my alcohol markers and then went through and darkened all my sketch lines with a Pigma Micron pen. That all worked very nicely. I actually got those little bundles of fruit on there as well. Here, the scale gets really odd, and I think these croquembouche are like gigantic all of a sudden. Those have got to be like cream puffs instead of little profiteroles, but whatever, I'm sure they taste delightful. Now, I was just getting ready to color the background with some kind of striped wallpaper or something when I thought, well, I could use that die and just trace the windows on that die for some nice architectural niches or something on the back wall. So that's what I did. I took the die and just traced the inside of those windows on the back wall, avoiding the stamped images, of course. And then, of course, scooted it over, did one more, scooted it over, did one more. I added some of our little flourishes at the top there, and then colored that back wall with a really light gray marker, which gave it some nice dimension. It really looks like kind of a giant rotunda party. I filled in the wood floor here on the bottom. I love my little table legs that I was able to get underneath the table there. I stamped the Happy Holidays using, again, intense black ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I was pleased with how many items I was able to get on this card, and by sketching in the table around the items, I avoided lots of masking. I did a little bit of masking just on the ends of the little garland here, and then of course just masked off the table to stamp those little table legs on the bottom. Happy Holidays. The table has been set. The guests are knocking at the door. Okay, it is October. It is not quite Halloween yet. How about a Halloween card? This is on a Hero Hues pitch black card base, and we've got a Happy Halloween card. Now, that candelabra stamp just reminded me of the floating candelabra in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland or Disney World or wherever you get your Disney. The Haunted Mansion has that long hallway with a candelabra floating in the distance with no visible means of support. I thought I might be able to create something like this on this card. I stamped the candelabra using some unicorn white pigment ink and colored that in with my colored pencils. I did sketch in just the tiniest, faintest little suggestion of a hallway there, and then I added some color around the edges using blueprint sketch and some black soot distress oxide ink, leaving the center open as much as possible. Now, I didn't think that just the candelabra floating in the center was really getting the message across, so I went ahead and I drew in a couple of disembodied eyes to add a little bit of the creep factor to this. I stamped the Happy Halloween. This is an old stamp from like September of 2018, a Love from Lizzie kit. I stamped that with embossing and watermark ink, embossed that with some off-white embossing powder. I did frame out this image with some black glitter peel-offs and added a couple of spiders, little spider sequins in the top corners for a little bit more shine, a little bit more bling. Happy Halloween. I love those eyes floating in the darkness. Okay, and I'm still waiting for my die cutting machine to get here. So how about a card with all about embossing? Here's a nice Merry Christmas card with that fun little star stamp from our stamp set, used to make some nice little tinsel hanging glitter thingies. I stamped all of these stars in a little pattern on the background here, and then I used a Versamarker pen to add the little dots between them. I was actually thinking about using a gold gel pen to draw the little dots between them, but realized if I did that with the Versamarker pen, then everything gets embossed in the same color. Everything looks exactly the same. I embossed all of those with some Hero Arts gold embossing powder. I stamped the sentiment, again, using embossing and watermark ink, and embossed that with more of the gold embossing powder as well. I trimmed that panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, added a thin red mat behind that. This is the dark green from our kit. This is that nice red from our kit. Glued those together and then down to a white card base. I added some golden gems here for a little sparkle, a little more shine, a little dimension to this ultimately very flat card. Merry Christmas. I really like this extra space over here. This feels like a lovely window decoration. I thought that was a great use for that star because it doesn't really look like a star you'd stamp in the sky. It definitely looks like a tree topper star, but I thought it would be quite difficult to mask off the angel on the top of the tree and add the star to the top of the tree. I thought this was a good use for that star stamp. Dark green and gold. This is clean and fairly simple, but quite effective. Love that. Now, of course, I thought that cheers sentiment and the stack of champagne glasses here were a perfect pair to go together. So I thought I could make a little bitty vignette in the center of a card. On a plain white card base, we have a cheers and a happy holidays card. Now I stamped the cheers with embossing ink and embossed that with Hero Art's gold embossing powder. Then I stamped the champagne glasses right on top of that and embossed that with silver embossing powder. I then added one more of those little silver glitter frames cut from that Alta New die, added that and thought that was it, but these just felt a little lonely all by themselves, and my die cutting machine came in. My Platinum 6 came in. Yay, I could die cut. So I went ahead and stamped a couple of these garlands on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, colored those with my Zig Clean color markers, die cut those out with my new die cutting machine, glued those to the card, and then stamped the Happy Holidays right below that and embossed that with some gold embossing powder. So we've got gold and silver and silver. I added a little bit of color to the champagne in our glasses with some alcohol markers, a little bit more sparkle coming out of the top of them with a Sakura Stardust pen. Really nice. Cheers, happy holidays. A perfect card for anybody who loves the champagne. Happy holidays. Cheers. Of course, if the cheers and the champagne go together, then the abundance and joy and the bowls of fruit go together perfectly as well. Our next card here we have sending an abundance of joy. Just that simple, nice little vignette right in the middle there. I stamped both of these with intense black ink. I did add some embossing powder to the sentiment there to give a little shine, a little dimension to that sentiment. And I colored all of the fruit here using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I cut everything down to size, added our panel to a red, orange, and purple matte. Those are all cardstocks from this card kit. Glued those down to a white card base. Now, I think it's because of the color that's in this stamp that I didn't feel like I needed extra stuff with this little vignette here. With just the embossing of the cheers and the glasses, this card felt a little naked and was certainly helped by those extra colorful garlands. And I think because we have so much color in those fruit bowls, we didn't need anything extra for this card, sending an abundance of joy. I'm very pleased with the coloring on this one. Look at that apple. Okay, I'm really searching for ideas here, but I had a bunch of these little window panes laying about on my desk from the die cutting of that shop window die. So I started playing around with them. That's what gives us our last card this month. On a white card base, we've got joy, a lovely little joy card. Look at that, using all of the panes of those window die cuts and cardstock from our kit. This isn't your standard Christmas card, but I think it's really graphic, and I really love the pattern of the window die cuts. And I cut 4 of the red, 4 of the purple, and 3 of the blue window pieces with just 2-inch strips of our jewel tone cardstock. I glued those down to a white glitter card base. See that kind of colorful glitter in the background there. I started by gluing this blue pane right in the center, and then I actually used the die cut to space them out evenly. I just placed that over the single pane glued down and then was able to space out the other ones just perfectly. Kept those spacings nice and even. I did the same thing on the bottom row. I think I glued this red one on first and was happy with it, and then used that die to space out the other pieces. Had to trim them off on their edges. Then I added thin little strips of the green cardstock from our kit to the top and bottom of that just to finish off that pattern. I thought that was a really fun little pattern to use on the background there, but I didn't want to cover it up with one of our big sentiments in the stamp set, because that's all of the interesting part of this pattern is right down the center. So I dug out an old die from my stash. This is the Scripty Joy word die from Lawn Fawn. I got a lot of these scripty one-word dies, and I decided to use joy for my sentiment on that. I die cut that once, from a piece of that glitter cardstock, then 3 times from white cardstock, 2 times from black cardstock. I glued those all together with the glitter on top and the black on the bottom, then glued those to the center of my card. Now, I was thinking about adding a sentiment on the inside, but then I realized that this doesn't necessarily have to be a Christmas card. A joy card would be fine for a birthday. A joy card would be great for a new baby card, for a congratulations card, an anniversary card. So here we have a few options with this joy card that you could use it for Christmas or almost any other time of the year. I love that little pattern. So that covers my 10 cards inspired by the My Monthly Hero October 2021 kit. I really do love the Victorian theming in this kit. That shop window cover plate die is a great stash builder. I'll use that a lot over the years, I'm sure. And I particularly love these great big holiday sentiments. That Merry Christmas will get used a lot. I love that. The abundance and joy, the cheers, all of them. Great fonts. Really love all of those sentiments. I also had a really good time trying to figure out how to make one-layer cards without doing a whole bunch of unnecessary masking. And it was actually quite nice to zen out with my colored pens and colored pencils and even my alcohol markers and just lose myself in a little bit of coloring this month. Lots of Christmas this month with a little nod to Halloween as well. Now, I did manage to use every single stamp in this stamp set, both of the flourishes, all of the, oh, where did I put these? Oh, yes, here's where I used it. Happy Holidays. On the inside, it says, from all of us to you. So that was my usage of those last little 2 sentiments here. But I've used all of the sentiments in the stamp set, most of the dies. I did use the cover plate die. I used a piece of the acetate. I think I really gave this kit a good workout this month. But I tell you, I'm not sure how I feel about these being our packaging, these new 8x10 zip top bags that everything's going to come in. I know it's totally selfish of me, and of course I love these bags. They're great to have, and everything in the kit fits well with it. But my Monthly Hero bin doesn't really fit this very well. So that's my complaint. These are all my Monthly Hero kits. So believe it or not, this kit is still available at Hero Arts. If I've sparked some ideas or managed to capture your imagination and you want to grab a kit for yourself, please use my links in the description down below. It is always truly appreciated and helps support this channel. Thank you so much for sharing some of your precious time with me here. I've cut back on my crafting a little bit this fall. I'm still trying to get used to all the new brouhaha at work while still managing my own mental health as well. Phew. I appreciate your patience and your support, even if I'm not posting as often as some. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, I send you and yours love and laughter and happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.